My watch is dead. What time is it? It's 9:51 p.m. I just had a long day of chess. Played two games today. In this video, I'm going to recap my second round game. This is a Reykjavik Open. If you missed the first round recap, link below, you can see the recent video on my channel. I'll be having a whole playlist of all my recaps, the playlist below as well. But in this game, I played on board 3, one of the top seeds, Grandmaster Yilmaz Mustafa, or Mustafa Yilmaz. Strong GM, and I prepared a little bit last night, and I actually woke up this morning around 8 a.m. and I thought the round was at 11 a.m., but it was actually at 9 a.m. I was planning to spend a couple hours in the morning preparing, but then I realized I had no time because the round was at 9. I was lucky to have not missed a round, but I was also fortunate that I looked at some lines the previous day and we got something that was pretty fresh in memory. I opted for e4 and went for a line that I've actually never played before. I've played bishop to b5 before, but I've never played the following move in this position. And the move I played is the fifth most popular move, bishop to a4. Let me hide everything to avoid spoilers. Bishop a4, it's kind of a newish, trendy move that became popular over recent years. And it's kind of a hard move to explain, but essentially, black is preparing a6 to chase the bishop. And if a6 is played, then I'm pretty much provoked to take on d7. So the point of bishop to a4 is a6 doesn't hit the bishop, and if black plays a6, white can respond with c4, preventing pawn b5 and then giving the bishop some room and later going for d4. So there is some logic to the move. I know it breaks some principle, moving the same piece twice and away from the center, but this is still prep. Knight f6 was played, castling, and here I said, oh no, my pawn. And the pawn is, I believe, poisonous in this position. Now, I'll admit, I didn't really look at this line too deeply in my preparation because I knew that he wasn't going to go for it. But the idea here for white is to play rook e1, knight f6, and then d4, and after takes. White has a lot of compensation for the pawn. There's some pins in the position with e-file and the diagonal. And just to show something funny, if black plays g6, preparing the fianchetto, white can just take the knight because this and this are pinned to the king. So, of course, that didn't happen. My pawn was not taken. Instead, pawn e6 was played. And then I play pawn c4. And again, I say, oh no, my pawn. Now, interestingly enough, I saw one game previously from my opponent. He was playing Grandmaster Maze, I think in the World Rapid or Blitz. And Mustafa actually took the pawn e4 against Maze. And there's a cool line that results from this position after rook e1, knight f6, d4 takes, and bishop e7. And this was his exact game against Maze. And this position, white has a really, really cool move, which I guess if you want to try and find, you can pause the video, or you can just pull up Gotham Chess on TikTok, and he'll probably scream, sacrifice the rook! Rook takes e6. It's actually a really cool bit of preparation because after takes, white's down a rook, but there's just a ton of compensation. And I looked at this, this was one of the few lines I looked at right before the game. And there's some weird engine draw, like after queen a5, pretty sure the top line is c5, b5, bishop takes b5, if queen takes, there's a triple fork. And then after king f7, white has nothing better than just to repeat. And this would be a funny draw. And I was ready to go into this. Both sides have to walk a very thin line to get to this position. But we did not draw the game within 15 moves. And I did not sacrifice a rook. I didn't even end up sacrificing the pawn because he did not take on e4. Instead, he played bishop e7. And then we got a more normal type position. After knight c3, castle, d4, takes. I get this Marazzi bind setup. Now this is a slightly stranger Marazzi bind because usually the bishop is on e2 rather than a4. But at the same time, white's controlling a nice amount of space. and I was still within my prep. A6, queen e2, queen c7, and I'm pretty sure I had this position on my computer at some point, maybe a day before the game. I was familiar with just some general plans in the position. I started here with king h1, idea I want to play f4 and not have to worry about the long diagonal. I should also note that there's cases where I want to play bishop to e3, but this is met with knight to e5, hitting the pawn, and also preparing knight g4. So when I play king h1, one nice benefit is that when I play f4 and bishop f3, if knight g4 ever happens, the bishop can retreat to g1. So it's an extra bonus of the king being here. So from here, my opponent played knight to e5, hitting the pawn. I played bishop to b3. Really the only logical way to defend the pawn. I didn't want to play b3. And actually, I think b3 is a blunder due to b5, and my bishop's trapped, and if takes, my knight hangs. So bishop b3 looks a little bit ugly, but it's called for in this position. He plays knight to c6, I defend, and then knight to a5. And then I go for f4, and I was feeling pretty good here. Like, I'm completed with development. Black still has to activate the queenside pieces, and it seemed like very quickly I'll have some potential to attack on the king side or just in the center. Very common idea is pawn e5. And after rook e8, bishop f2, b6, I get in the move e5 and just expand, hitting the knight. Knight retreated to d7, and then I bring the bishop to g3, so creating some extra vision against the queen. And after bishop to b7, this is a moment where I had a move in mind, and rather than calculating and taking a lot of time, I played my next move pretty quickly because it's just such an intuitive move. I went ahead and played pawn f5. And the reason why this is just very intuitive is because it's making three different pieces happier in the position. Essentially, I'm opening up lines for my bishop, my rook, and potentially the other bishop. There's cases where this bishop comes to life, maybe in the not so distant future, there's e5, and I can target the king along this diagonal. So f5, I thought, was just a really nice way to apply a ton of pressure. And actually, I did spend about 7 minutes to play this move, but it felt like a quick think, given that there's a lot of complications that can arise with all these different captures. Of course, I'm also pressuring e6, given that there's two attackers now. And after I played this move, just one funny tidbit, as my opponent was thinking, none other than Vasily Ivanchuk walked by, and he stopped and just gazed at this position. And it felt so good to have a legend watching over and maybe admiring this move. I don't know what was going through his mind. Maybe he was thinking this was just a joke for white, but in the moment I was feeling good. And my opponent took some time and took on e5. Now it looks like this hits the knight, but the pawn is pinned, so I don't actually have to move the knight. Instead, I take on e6. And after pawn takes e6, I ended up taking a pretty long think here, because the move I initially wanted to play was knight takes e6, hitting the queen, and this looks really good for white at first glance, but I wasn't sure how to meet queen c6 here, because this not only applies pressure to the g-pawn, but also puts my knight in an awkward spot, and my knight is just about trapped in this position. Like, if I defend it, I just get mated, and if I play pawn c5, there's knight takes b3 and queen e6. I spent a long time trying to calculate this line, knight g7, king g7, and then what was I looking at? Bishop a4, ideas later of queen g4, but then there's queen e6. And I spent a long time like trying to calculate the forcing lines, but I couldn't arrive at like a definite conclusion. So rather than trying to force matters, I decided not to take the pawn on e6, but rather play bishop to c2, improving the bishop and trying to target the h7 pawn. Now, my opponent played bishop f6, I played queen h5, just trying to bring as many pieces towards the king side as possible. He defends with knight f8, and I still leave my knight on d4 and improve my other knight with knight to e4. And In this moment, I was thinking about a Kasparov quote. He had like a really nice quote. I don't remember the exact wording, but he said something like, if you have more attackers than the opponent has defenders, then it's generally just a winning attack. Like mathematically, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 attackers should overpower fewer defenders. So I felt inspired by Kasparov in this position, just trying to attack with as many things as possible. And here, of course, I'm threatening to take on f6, so black still needs to defend. He played queen e7, and then I finally move my knight to f3. So here I'm still down a pawn, but this pawn is really weak, and I thought it's very likely that I'll be able to take it soon. And then he takes on c4. And I will say that I've analyzed the game briefly with the engine, and this was actually a really key moment. Because after he took on c4, I mean, he spent about a minute on this move. I saw that he was threatening knight e3. And I very quickly played rook e1. You can see based on the timestamp, I spent about 30 seconds because there is a 30-second increment. Now, rook e1 looks very normal. It's improving my last piece, preventing knight e3. But it turns out that white has a winning tactic here. And both of us just completely missed it. And it's actually very, very simple. So if you want to pause the video, it's white to move. It's essentially a 2-move combination to win a piece. And what I should have done was just pause for a moment and acknowledge this knight is just undefended, and I should look for the forcing moves, look for checks and captures. It turns out the winning move is a check and a capture. Knight takes f6. And actually for the next few moves, I didn't want to play this because after pawn takes, the queen defends, and I thought the structure is very solid. But in this position, white has queen g4, and I'm just winning a knight. So for this reason, if black can't take with pawn, the queen has to take. This isn't much better for black. This is probably even worse because then knight g5 and simple attack on the queen, attack on h7. White's completely winning here. So it was a little bit disappointing that I missed such a simple combination, especially because it was just an easy to consider move. It just required the board vision. But I played rook e1. I was still feeling good. He plays rook c8. I played bishop to b1. I was sensing some issues, like black might be threatening knight d2 or even knight e3 to try and trade off my bishop. So I wanted to preserve it. Right after I played bishop e1, I regretted not even considering rook f2. Maybe this is a better option. But game went on. He plays rook d8. Then I play rook f2. And then there's some trade on e4. He plays knight d6, bishop to c2, and then queen f7. So I'm still down a pawn, but still have some initiative on the king side. And in this moment, it looks like I can trade queens and win the pawn. However, this would be a big mistake. If I take on f7, takes, there are 3 attackers, only 2 defenders. But if we calculate until the end of the line, takes, black to move and win, rook takes e2, and oh no, I'm getting maiden on the back rank. So I was aware of my back rank problems, and generally when you're the one attacking, then you want to keep queens on the board. So I kept my queen on the board, played queen g4, and then he plays rook c4, which I did not see coming. But it turns out this wasn't such an annoying move because I just go back to h3. And the rook is actually a target now, ready to bring the bishop back to this diagonal and try and shish kebab all of the black pieces. So he plays knight to f5, perhaps trying to induce some more trades. But then I grab the pawn on e5, and now I'm only down 1 pawn. I was down 2 pawns for many moves, but I was feeling good because if bishop takes bishop, I take and fork. So black is under serious pressure. He plays knight g6. I play bishop b3, hitting the rook c6, and then rook e2. So just building up pressure against this weak e6 point. And I'm essentially using pieces from all directions to target one of the weakest points in black's position. He takes on e5, and then I played a really nice move, which took me a little moment to consider. I went ahead and played rook takes e5, not taking with the knight, which is generally more natural, but allowing black to take the rook, because if he does, I'm not only winning back the exchange, but in the end, let's say queen c7, I would take, and then take on f5 and just winning a piece. There's a pin on the diagonal. So black is under serious pressure here. Then he plays on f4, and as we can see, we're both very low on time. He played this move with 12 seconds left. I was also falling pretty low on time. And here I saw my queen was attacked. I saw that knight d3 is an idea. And I didn't really take much time to play the move queen to g4. But I really should have slowed down and again considered just the forcing moves, the forcing captures in the position, because I missed just another very simple winning tactical opportunity. If you want to try and find it, pause the video. But the simple move is queen takes f5. Oh no, my queen. And if he takes it, I'm mating on e8. And this is what I missed. Like I was considering this. I just missed the mating idea. After takes. This is checkmate because the queen is pinned to the king. And this would have been a really nice way to finish things off. Turns out also rook takes f5 is winning because it forces trades and wins material. But I missed both of those moves. I still thought queen g4 was winning because I'm threatening to take the knight. I'm also threatening to take on f5, and I calculated that if knight to d3, then I just take on e6, and then there's massive issues for black with the bishop piercing through the position. But he managed to find a really nice resource to defend here, knight to d4, essentially covering both knights, moving this knight away from danger, defending the knight on f4, and also covering the pawn, and also attacking my bishop. So this is just such a multi-purpose move. I was trying to figure out if I still have a win here. I went ahead and took on d4 after takes, played g3, and I still thought the position is really close to winning, given that there's this pin against the fourth rank. And if knight e2 attempting to defend, I just take it and I win a piece. So it looks like white's on the verge of winning material, but he comes up with another really nice resourceful counterattack, pawn h5, and my queen can't really stay pinning because of queen h4, then knight e2 becomes possible, and it's this weird geometry where the knight defends a rook, which hits the queen. The rook also covers queen d8 check, and he's threatening checkmate in one. So unfortunately, I had to retreat with the queen, and then he plays knight d5, and I believe this was move 39? Yeah, this is next move is move 39. So I should note that on move 40, we both get an additional half hour. We'll see the timestamps change very soon. So after queen e2, he plays knight c7, and then I played rook takes h5, and he plays queen g6. And at this point, we both have half hour extra. I know the clocks didn't update, but yeah, the position has really transformed over the last several moves. And somehow I did not manage to get any sort of winning position. And black has almost completely consolidated. But in the moment, I still felt like I was better here because of the pressure against e6. And I still thought I was playing for a win. I played rook to e5. Now I have 4 attackers against the pawn. He played queen h6. And here I was thinking about taking the pawn because I do have 4 attackers. He only has 3 defenders. But if I take the pawn here, it's not so simple because he can takes. And after takes, I think this is just a draw. Rook d1, king g2. He wins the pawn in the end. Actually, everything just simplifies. I would have to be careful, maybe play a4, and this should be a draw. Rook b4, I have a5. So that didn't happen. I didn't want to simplify everything and just settle on a draw. I wanted to push for a win, so I opted for queen to f3. Then he played the move rook to c1. And here I really wanted to play the move rook takes e6 which at first looks really close to winning because I'm hitting the queen and opening the diagonal. And if he takes, I take back with check, and this is really good for white. And another calculation is if he takes on e6, I would take, and if king moves over, then white has some mating net, and I'm pretty sure this is winning eventually, like bishop f5, and then queen. This should be winning, I think. Here. Here. Yeah, eventually, like, I take on g6 and then take, and I have 2 extra pawns. So I was dreaming of making this work, but after rook e6, he can take, and after bishop takes, he can take with queen, because my rook is pinned on the first rank. And after I take here, I'm up a pawn. It still looks like white has decent winning chances, but then there's rook d2. And I spent a long time trying to calculate these lines, and I just didn't see how white can play for a win here, because the pawns on the queen side are very weak. And there's not a great way to exploit the black king. My king is actually a bit airy on h1. So after a bit of a think, I decided to play the move pawn h4 in this position, simply trying to expand on the king side, maybe someday set up rook to g5. But it turns out h4 is a really bad tactical blunder. And so far this game, it's been me missing tactical opportunities for myself. But here I missed a very strong tactic for my opponent, and my opponent found it. And I didn't even see it coming until he played the move. If you want to pause the video, you can try and find the tactic for black. Move is rook takes h4, taking advantage of the fact that if I take, he can take and hit my rook on e1, and this is not good for white. Actually, maybe even better is to start with rook takes e1 and then take, and it would lead to a position where white is down 2 pawns, and yeah, black has very, very good chances to convert. So, yeah, once I saw rook h4 on the board, I just had that sinking feeling in my stomach that things have gone terribly wrong. But I realize the game is still not over, because I can play on with king g1, and it's not immediately crushing for black because h1 is under control, my rook's defended. But then he played a really nice move here, queen d2, leaving his rook on pre and hitting my rook on e1. And what this does is essentially simplifies matters. It provokes me to trade rooks and then trade queens. If I play queen f1, there's this tactic rook h1, so I didn't want to blunder my queen. But after the queen trade, black is up a clean pawn, and he still has initiative too, rook attacking the bishop on d1, also preparing rook to d2, and after bishop to b3, he played just a really classy move here. And I think his next move shows his strength as a GM, that he was able to evaluate the resulting endgame. He played rook d2. If I were black, I would be very hesitant to allow simplification. Bishop takes e6. I did play this move. After takes, 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 takes. This looks like very close to a draw because it's 2-on-3. And there's a lot of cases where even if you're up a pawn in a rook ending, there's good chances for the side with less pawns to hold. But in this position, he just understood that black has a pretty clean winning path. And I'll just play through the next several moves showing the winning strategy for black. I had to defend the pawn, and he prevents me from playing pawn a5, so I can't liquidate the queen side. I was forced to wait. And then he plays g5, brought the pawn to g4, and now the plan is simply to play rook b4, walk the king over, defend the pawn, and then either win this pawn or this pawn. And there's really not much I can do. There's really no counterplay because when the rook's on b4, it defends both pawns, and my king is completely cut off. So next several moves were just a lot of sadness. I tried to play on and create some trick, but yeah, the checks run out eventually. He hides his king on a6. And I had one final trick. After king c3 takes king b3, rook e4, I played the move rook f6. And here I said, oh no, my pawn. Because after he played this, I played king a4. He can't mate me because the pawn's pinned. And when he took my pawn, I took on b6 and he took back and it's stalemate. And then I woke up from all my daydreams and realized that this didn't happen. He didn't play rook e3. He first plays pawn a4, and then he wins a pawn on g3 very cleanly. So there's no stalemate trick. And I resigned in this position. It was a really painful game. I think in total, the game lasted about 5 hours. And yeah, I had multiple winning chances. And if I had won this game, it would have been one of my best upsets ever, at least one of the highest rated players I've ever defeated. But I don't know exactly the reason for just missing the simple tactics. It may have been not identifying the key moments. It may have been some issues with time management, slowing down. I woke up this morning at like 4 a.m., so I'm still a little bit jet lagged. And I don't like to make excuses, but I think it's really important when you have a game like this with just so many missed opportunities and blunders, you can't really think that I'm stupid and I'm just a bozo for missing so many moves. But it's so important to reflect and actually identify what caused these mistakes to happen, and try and resolve them for future games and future tournaments. I might have to just do more tactical training, might have to work on my physical stamina and sleep and just alertness at the board. Maybe I should be prepared with more tea. But yeah, it was a painful game, but some valuable lessons. I'm upset, but at the same time, I was happy to get a good fight and also happy to get great opening preparation and be in the spot to take down a strong GM. So what to do? I kind of felt like I needed a therapy puppy after this game. But yeah, I'm gonna wrap it up here because it's getting really late and I still have to recap my round three game, which I played just a couple hours after this game finished. So stay tuned for the round three recap. Really appreciate you watching until the very end. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.